Delicious. What's up, Stink? How you doing, man?
Man, I am great. How are you guys?
We're doing fantastic because we woke up to the news that Trent Williams is on his way, and that helped, you know?
Yeah. Well, you know what's funny is, I've been here in New York doing this new show called Breakfast Ball. It's way too early for you guys in San Francisco. It's 8 to 10 Eastern, so I record it. But anyhow, it's been funny because all last week and this week, I'm like, I am not the least bit concerned. Like they're gonna figure out a way to get Ayuk done or whatever, or traded or whatever they were gonna do. And Trent Williams is such a freak show that guy doesn't need practice. As a matter of fact, my whole kind of thought process on Trent was it's probably best just to not have him practice, right? Probably best, at 15 years in the league and being one of the most dominant players in the league, just don't even have him practice. Come in when he comes in and he'd be ready to roll. So I assumed that they would get this done. That was kind of what I felt all along, and it was great to see them get that contract signed and watch him get paid because the dude is just an absolute dominant freak show. So he's just one of those dudes. Like, it's funny when you talk to Kyle, he's like, "Hey, listen, man, this is a dude that when he does something, when he practices, like the team shuts down to watch him. Like that's how impressive he is. Like other athletes that have played professional football will stop what they're doing to watch this guy, his movement skills, and the way he dominates the line of scrimmage."
And it's just fun to watch as a layman, as Mark and I, neither one of us played football at any real high level, but to watch him and to have him stand out for a layman like me, it just impresses me. But makes me wonder, Mark, does he make the right or the left guard rather in the center and the whole offensive line? Does everybody else around him get better just by him being there?
What's interesting, and you guys had McGlinchey there for a while, and now McGlinchey's playing in Denver. But just watching when they got Trent, watching McGlinchey's game on the other side grow, especially in the run blocking aspect of his game, was like it was night and day. How all of a sudden McGlinchey started taking on some of those characteristics. Now, he's never going to be Trent Williams, but I'm talking about aggressiveness, coming off the ball, trying to be the first strike guy, trying to be dominant at the line of scrimmage. And not so like Trent's just one of those dudes, like if he whiffs, he doesn't really care. Because if he hits you, he's literally going to murder you. Like it's like the way he comes off the ball, it's ridiculous. And so, like, it's funny. I play with a guy who's, an all decade of 2 decades, the 80s and 90s, in Gary Zimmerman. And not that he was physically dominant like that, but he was such a dominant player, and he was such a dominant athlete. And, I was a Pro Bowl player when I left Washington and came to Denver, and I lined up next to Gary. And it was like the very first practice, I was like, man, I got to pick my game up. Like, this guy practices faster than I practice. And everything, and you're just like, wow, he's that good. And that's what Trent does for everybody else on that line of scrimmage. They're like, oh, shoot, like he can coast and be better than you. And so that when he plays that way, you start to look at your game and go, man, I got to pick it up. Otherwise, even though I'm giving great effort, I'm going to embarrass myself because I'm on the same clip as him. And, I'm on the same film as him. So those guys have just an incredible impact on your organization, on your football team.
Hanging with Mark Schlereth, and Insider Calls are brought to you by Hellman's Real Mayonnaise. You can purchase Hellman's at your local Walmart, Kroger, or grocery store to add extra deliciousness and creamy flavor to your game day dishes this football season. Okay, Stink, I know that, the pros, you deal with this all the time, but the 49er camp was filled with constant talk about contracts and holdouts. In what way, if at all, does that affect what's about to happen next as the season starts?
Well, I mean, obviously a couple things. One, it just becomes a distraction. And mostly because, you got to answer the question every day. And I don't understand, like, the whole hold in thing, like Ayuk being around. Like that, I just would think that would get annoying over time, right? I just think as a player, you'd look at the guy and go, really, dude? Like, that's what we're going to do? So and then you got to answer the questions all the time and all that kind of stuff. And I get that's the way guys are getting around, getting fined, and I understand all that. But, I think right now there's just absolute relief that everything is done, and now we don't have to talk about any of that stuff. Let's face it, when you talk about talented teams, you're talking about San Francisco, you're talking about Kansas City, you're talking about Philadelphia, you're talking about the Detroit Lions. Those are some of the most talented teams, the Baltimore Ravens, the most talented teams in football. And they're right up there with them. And now they've got all their guys in and they're ready to roll, and they're playing Monday night. So obviously getting this done today, you're right back in there. Wednesday is actually like a Tuesday when you play Monday night. So, you got an extra day of preparation. So that's always a good thing as well. But listen, once everybody's in, like, it can annoy you and stuff, and all the questions can annoy you and it can get old. But once everybody's in, it just becomes, it becomes water under the bridge. Nobody really cares anymore. So I don't think it really affects the Niners, and I don't think it really affects anything that they did, this offseason and during training camp.
Yeah, Trent's in 6 days ahead of the opener, and Brandon Ayuk about the same. And you mentioned a talented roster, one of the most talented in football. And do you look at Brock Purdy at quarterback and forget the draft spot and forget the salary, but is he a key piece? Is he really as talented in your eyes as the guys all around him?
Oh, yeah. And maybe it depends on your definition of talent, right? I mean, he doesn't have, the athletic talent of a McCaffrey or a Deebo Samuel or a Trent Williams or, a Fred Warner or any of those guys. But that dude from the neck up is like, that dude's a legitimate NFL quarterback from the neck up. And I'm not saying he's not athletic, he'll be the first to tell you, hey, listen, man, I'm not, I wasn't blessed. I know that I don't have like elite level arm talent. I know, and I think this goes to and points to intelligence. I know what my weaknesses are. I know what I can't do. And I think that's more important than knowing what you are, is knowing what you aren't, and making sure you play to your strengths, but also mitigate your weaknesses. Those are some of the most important important lessons you can learn as a player. But I will tell you this, when it comes to processing an offense, when it comes to being on time with your footwork and your footwork leading to on time and accurate passes, and this is what this guy does. He's one of the top, quarterbacks. He's one of the top players in the league when it comes to the way he plays the game and the way he processes information. And instantly will eliminate pre-snap a side. Like, no, that's not a good side. Like, I'm going to the other side. And you watch him do it time and time again. It's not an accident. Like, it is not an accident. That dude can process. And, I always talk about accuracy. And obviously I had a son that played in the big leagues, throwing. But, it's akin to pitching in that if you're not on time, like if your arm lags behind or you're not on time, you cannot throw strikes. And like if your body's ahead of your arm, like you can't throw strikes. Your arm trails, and then you have to make up for that because your arm's behind. And a couple of things happen. You either miss higher outside, or you pull the ball, you hold it too long, and you throw one in the dirt inside. Like that's what happens when you're late, timing-wise, in your drops. Well, then you overthrow things, and you can't be accurate if you're not on time. And that dude is just flat out on time all the time, and it's why he can get away and be totally accurate and totally on point with the football, because he is on time with the football.
Hey, Mark, where are we going with these wide receiver contracts? Like how much longer can NFL teams continue to pay wide receivers at that level?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? And on the Stinking Truth podcast, I've talked about Ayuk several times, and I think he's a really fine player. But I have sat down with multiple coordinators that are facing the San Francisco 49ers, and never once has anybody said, hey, our priority is to stop Ayuk. It's never been said. It's, hey, man, we got to find a way to stop, Christian McCaffrey. We've got to find a way to stop, Deebo Samuel. We got to find a way to stop George. Like, he's the fourth option. And so, like I will say this about wide receivers, and it does kind of just blow me away. Football, everybody's a dependent player, right? You're dependent on everybody doing their job. But there's no more dependent player in the National Football League than a wide receiver. 10 other guys have to do their job exceptionally well for you to sniff a football. And so, like, I look at the other thing is when you break down film, when you start looking, like I'll do this every week. I'm calling a game. I'll start looking at every guy's over the last 3 weeks, every ball a guy catches. And what you'll find is there's certain receivers that run certain routes. There's guys that run in-cutting routes. There's guys that run routes outside the numbers. There's guys that are just crossers. It's what they do, right? It's what they're good at. There's very few guys that run every route in the route tree. There's very few guys that can, run everything from the outside or the inside or motion into, slots or stacks or whatever. Like, there's very few guys that do everything well. Those seem to be the guys that get paid. But, I wonder if there's a market correction at some point. Like we saw it this year. I call it the Fangio effect. So everybody started playing this two shell, where a lot of quarters coverage and you're reading, you're becoming an alley player, you're reading the tight end. And if he blocks, you're a first force guy and all that stuff at the safety position. But remember when even 4 or 5 years ago, when that middle of the field eraser safety, he was getting 15, 18 million bucks a year. And everybody was getting it. And all of a sudden the market corrected and go, well, nobody plays that style of defense anymore. And we don't need to pay our safeties that much money. It's kind of like what happened to the fullback years ago. And, I don't know that there will be. I mean, I guess as long as it's still 70% past this league or in a lot of cases, then maybe that will never change. But it seems to be a little bit out of whack in my mind.
No doubt, and that's what makes this team so fascinating to me, Mark. And I worked with Lo Neal for about 4 years doing a morning show, and so he taught me a lot about football and about what the Niners do with the fullback and the 21 personnel and having a wide receiver like Brandon Ayuk who can block. Does that add to his value to make him less of an anomaly in this inflated wide receiver market?
Well, obviously, like you're not going to play in that offense as a wide receiver if you don't block.
Right.
I mean, that is a Shanahan. That's passed down from the time Kyle was holding the cord. He's the last guy in the history of the Super Bowl to hold the head coach's cord. Because after the Super Bowl, after Super Bowl 33, I believe it was, they went to wireless headsets. So Kyle is the last person in the history of the National Football League to hold a head coach's cord on the Super Bowl on Super Bowl Sunday on the
That
sideline.
is incredible Shanahan trivia knowledge. The last cord holder. Wow.
The last cord holder. Yep, they cut the cord on Kyle cut the cord. So, but I played for his dad forever, and it's just like you don't block, you don't get to play. You just flat don't get to play at the tight end position, the fullback position, at the wide receiver position. And so, those guys, they impress upon those guys, and Ayuk will do that. Ayuk is grown in that avenue of his game, and he's grown. His entire game has grown because he was in the doghouse several different occasions. When he first got to the 49ers as a 31st overall pick or whatever it was out of, I think, A-State. But he has really grown into a really, really good, top-notch type of receiver. And so, I'm glad that he got paid. Like I said, a bunch. I wouldn't make him a top 3 paid guy or top 4 paid guy, but I'm glad he got paid. I'm glad he's back into camp because this team is so damn good. And, I frankly, I root for him because of Kyle Shanahan and the Shanahans and how good they've been to me. And, Mike Shanahan added 3 or 4 years to my career. So I'm forever in debt, and I've learned so much. And, I still sit with Mike and watch film and the whole 9 yards. So, I have a lot of, just a lot of gratitude. And a lot of love for the Shanahan family. They've been really good to me, and Kyle's been good to me, and they're a phenomenal family, phenomenal coach. Kyle's an unbelievable coach, and so it's really cool to see this, and and I'm rooting for them to kind of finally seal the deal because I would love to see it.
Well, Stink, that's a perfect segue to one other thing I wanted to ask you. And look, we're all part of the media. People say things. They've got big takes. But Peter Schrager, NFL Network, earlier today was asked, of all coaches in the NFL, who's got the most pressure on him? And he immediately went to Kyle Shanahan and said he's got the most riding on this season of any coach in the whole league. How does that grab you?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't thought about that, but sure. I mean, you've been close 2 times. Now, you could sit there and say, well, listen, Mike McCarthy, if they don't do something in the playoffs, Mike McCarthy's certainly probably going to lose his job. So I think there's other coaches you could point to, Nick Sirianni, like the way they finished the season last year in Philadelphia. Kyle has done this and gone to multiple Super Bowls with, 2 quarterbacks that people have questions about. Come on now. I love Brock Purdy, but and I think Brock Purdy is great, but Brock Purdy isn't on the list of the top 5 dudes in the National Football League. And I don't know if he makes, the average person's top 10 list. And then he also went with Jimmy Garoppolo. So, that in and of itself shows you what kind of coach that Kyle is. I would tell you this is the pressure. The pressure is after this season you're going to have to pay your quarterback. And then you're probably going to have to make some roster decisions that to this point you haven't had to make because you've been able to get away without paying your quarterback all that money. So it'll be interesting, although I will say the Niners have found a way to, circumvent and manipulate the cap, which is awesome. Which I always say the cap is fake anyhow. So I like what they're doing in that regard. And, you push the money forward, you take care of your players, and you push your chips in the middle, and you say, we're all in, we're trying to win a championship. So I'd like to see that happen.
Yeah, Mark, my partner likes to use the expression cap schmap.
Cap schmap, Mark. Yeah, cap schmap. Oh, gosh, we can't fit it. I'm like, cap schmap.
Right. If you hey, listen, man, if you really want to do it, when they say, hey, man, it's cap restrictions and cap this and that just tells me you don't really, really covet the player. Because if you really, really love the player, you know what you do? You find the money. You renegotiate contracts. You push money forward. You figure out how to get it done. There was never any question in anybody's mind, I don't believe, that they were going to find a way to get a deal done with Trent Williams. Was there ever any question that Trent Williams wasn't going to line up this year? No. Now, there was a question with Ayuk, maybe they trade him, whatever the case may be, but there was never any question about Trent. So, yeah, I'm with you. What is it, cap schmap?
Cap schmap.
Cap schmap.
Yeah, can we do something with that? I know you got your new fancy show out there. You could use that if you want.
Yeah, well, here's the deal. Here's how I operate. Everybody is kind of my intellectual property. So the first time that I use that, I'm gonna credit you. The second time I use it, I'm gonna say, hey, some guy I know who says cap schmap.
Yeah.
The third time I use it, it's just mine. So
that's fair.
I'll use it on the streets of New York later on this evening. I'll walk down to get something to eat here, and I'll use the cash map, and then the next thing I know, it'll be mine here by morning.
I have been referred to as some guy many times in my life, Mark. I am not offended by that.
Right.
All right, there it is.
And your show is breakfast ball, right? That's obviously a golf reference. And do you take a breakfast ball when you play no matter what?
Dude, listen, I don't play a whole lot of golf, so I will hit it until I'm happy. I'm not worried about that people are score this, score that. I don't care. I'll go if I go out and play, even if I spray it, if I just hit it solid, I'm like, oh wow, felt great today, right?
Yeah.
And I could bunt it around and score well, and it's not even fun.
Yeah.
I want to tee it, grip it and rip it. I just want to go.
I love
just
it.
A couple good swings.
Yeah.
That's all you need to make it an okay day, you know?
And I believe in Montessori scoring, Mark. You put down whatever number makes you feel good.
Okay, I'm with that. I'm just like, hey, you can't take more than a double. Let's move.
All right, let's go.
Let's move.
Yeah.
By the way, hey, Stink, not to swing it back to anything serious, but before you go, we did want to get a thought on Ricky Pearsall and how you as a teammate would handle something like that and what a situation like this kind of does to a team as the season's starting.
Yeah, I mean, it's a devastating thing, obviously, right? And you know, makes you think twice about, hey, where am I going? I mean, he was at an autograph signing, which is absolutely insane. But, you know, it makes you feel like, hey, man, people are watching, you know, potential victim. You know, how do I dress when I leave the house? Do I wear like all those things? It makes you think. And it's just a scary situation. And it is one of those things, I think, as a team, you rally around a guy, you know, and you're just happy that he's okay. But obviously he's going to miss time. Now, he had already missed some time in training camp and all that stuff, but he's going to miss time. And you know, it's a devastating situation, right? You just feel like completely violated. So I hate that for him. I hate that for the Niners. But it also be one of those things you rally around together as a team and you protect each other and protect yourself. And, you know, and at least it's kind of one of those wake-up calls of, you know, there's a lot of crazy folks out there, and so we got to be careful.
Indeed. Well said. And Stink, we're looking forward to hanging out with you here and there throughout the season, so thank you so much. Congrats on the new show as well.
Thank you, guys. Take care.
Thanks,
All right,
Mark.
there he goes, Mark Schlereth, and that was Odyssey NFL insider Mark Schlereth, host of the Stinkin' Truth podcast. Insider Calls brought to you by Hellman's Real Mayonnaise. Mayo game day. Be delicious.